What is going on YouTube? It's your boy Spanko, and today I'm back with another, I guess you could call it anti-meta rogue deck, and that is a Kaiju deck profile. Now I'm excited to bring you guys this because this is kind of like anti-meta in the sense of it breaks boards and then you control the game state. Now a while ago I did a Kaiju deck profile. This is updated for today's metagame, so I hope you guys enjoy this deck profile. If you do, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. The goal is 5,000. Let's make it happen. I know we can make it happen. So I'm really excited to bring this to you, but I want to mention that this is not a budget version, I guess you could say. So this is a competitive anti-meta version, if you guys want to call it competitive. What I mean by that is if you wanted to take this to a locals or something, this is how you would optimally want to play it so that you can win games and like be successful with it. However, I am also going to be doing a budget version of this deck, which I don't know if it's going to be the next video, but if you guys just stay tuned to the channel, you guys will see the budget version of pretty much the same deck. But there's going to be a budget version for any players who, you know, don't want to put the money down on some of the expensive stuff, some of the more, you know, pricey stuff. If you guys don't want to do that, don't worry, I will have a budget profile coming out soon for this deck. So without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. Now we are starting off with double Jizukiru, one Thunder King. Now if you guys don't know, each of these kaijus have their own effects that is actually pretty important, right? And the reason they're actually important is because people don't usually think of kaijus as having their own effects. They think of kaijus as, oh, let's like kaiju my opponent's dragoons or my opponent's big monster, and then I can start playing from there, right? The thing is with this deck, because you're playing the Kyoto, because you can get kaiju counters on the field pretty easily, then you can use these effects pretty well. Now, if you guys don't know, Jizukiru has a really cool effect where you can stop an targeting effect. So if your opponent targets a monster on the field, or targets a card on the field, I should say, you can remove 3 kaiju counters to negate it. Also, if you do that, then you can destroy 1 card on the field. Thunder King is really good. The only thing that's making this not like a tier 0 monster is the fact that it's not a quick effect. So once per turn, you can remove 3 kaiju counters from anywhere on the field. Your opponent's cards and effects cannot be activated for the rest of the turn. This is literally Calamities or Zexal. But the problem is, it's a once per turn on your turn. It's not a quick effect. If this was a quick effect, this would be disgustingly good. This would be like the new Calamities. But of course, it's not like that. It also gets 3 attacks on monsters per battle phase, which is pretty cool in that sense. You got a Dogoran. Dogoran is just pretty much a Raigeki. You got a Godarla. Now, the main reason you're playing Godarla is because Bird Up, Tri-Brigade, that kind of stuff makes Barrier Statue. And so this is just a win that you can pretty much use to, you know, tribute over a big monster, like let's say an Apollo that your opponent controls, right? So that's really why the only reason you're playing the Godarla. It does have an effect. You can remove 3 kaiju counters from anywhere on the field, and the attack and defense of all other monsters become half. That's okay, it comes up here and there, but the more important part is that just that it's win, you know? And the thing is, people forget that with Kyoto, you can actually search a kaiju. So if you need to, you can search the Godarla to out like the barrier statue specifically, right? Playing 3 Gameciel, if you guys don't know, Gameciel is, in my opinion, probably the best kaiju, and the reason for that is you can remove 2 kaiju counters, so not 3. You can remove 2 kaiju counters from anywhere on the field, negate the activation of effect. So the reason this is really good is because it's pretty much a Solemn Judgment, but a quick effect Solemn Judgment, and it's like pretty much infinite negates if you have the counters for it. Now, the reason a lot of the time people call this like infinite negates or negate loops or whatever they want to call it is because Waterfront gets a counter every time a card goes to the graveyard. If let's say this card has 5 counters on it, you remove 2 to negate something, but then you're gonna end up gaining 1 because that card is gonna be going to the graveyard anyway, so you're gonna get another counter. So pretty much you're only removing 1 counter per negate. If you have 5 on this, you can pretty much have 5 negates, which is pretty good. So yeah, I think the math works out like that. Something like that. So Gameciel is really good. You got a Radiant. Radiant's really good just generally, just another kaiju, but he also gets tokens on the field. Doesn't really like mean anything, to be honest. You don't really use the effect at all. Just another name, more importantly, because for Slumber and whatnot, sometimes you want to be summoning this. You really want to summon with Slumber, I should say. With Slumber, you really want to summon the names that you don't think you're going to use yourself. So on your opponent's field, you're probably going to be summoning the Radiant, right? You got the Humongous as well. It doesn't really come up too often, but it does have an effect where if an opponent normal or special summons a monster, I can remove 2 kaiju counters, and then that monster can attack, and it has its effect negated, so that's pretty cool. It doesn't really come up too often. Gameciel is just better in my opinion, but yeah, Humongous is just there for another name. Now you're playing Luna. Luna is pretty much your only normal summon in the deck. The reason this is really important, if this card is normal summoned, I can add another Luna to my hand. Any spellcaster with 1850, you're going to be adding another Luna. Gets you kind of card advantage in that sense. But the really cool thing about this is quick effect. You can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Your opponent can send 1 card from their deck or extra deck to the graveyard with the same name and negate this effect. Otherwise, this and that card comes back to the hand. And the reason that's really important is because if you kaiju your opponent, you can normal summon your Luna, target the kaiju, you can bounce both back to your own hand, and then kaiju again. So that's why Luna is pretty much the best normal summon that this deck can play. And obviously it's just a +1 on summon, so yeah, it's pretty good in that sense. Then you got an Eater of Millions. Of course, you're not really using your extra deck too much. If you guys see the extra deck here, I'm going to explain it honestly when we get to it, but just to keep things short for the extra deck, you don't really need your extra deck too much. Most of this is just utility, and I'll explain it when I get there, but yeah. So Eater of Millions, you can just summon. It outs certain things, you know, monsters that you can't destroy in battle, whatnot. Eater of Millions does out that, which is pretty cool. Also, it's just kind of defensive as well, because if you summon your Eater of Millions, your opponent can't really attack into it unless they choose to lose one of their own monsters, so it just makes it so that your opponent has to play around certain things. Then you got Alpha, Triple Alpha, as well as a Dinosaur or Pankatrops. Now, this should be pretty, like, obvious. Just Alpha is a special summon for you. It's also 3000 attack, and it gets over Dragoon, which is pretty much the most important thing of this, because you can just crash into the Dragoon with this. So it's pretty good in that sense. You also got the Pankatrops, of course. Pankatrops is really good against back row decks, really good against monsters. It's just a 2600 beater that you can special summon. This card is really, really good. Also, the reason Alpha is really good is because I should mention, so this card is special summoned when the total attack of all monsters your opponent controls is more than that of all monsters you control. So this could be pretty good, because let's say you Jizukiro your opponent. So you Kaiju your opponent with a Jizukiro. This is 3300, right? Let's say this is the only monster on their side of the field. Even if you special summon your Pankatrops, you can still special summon Alpha, because this is at 33, this is only at 26. So at this point, you can special summon your Alpha, and you have a really good play in that. You have 2 monsters now on the board, and you can bounce the Jizukiro, and then you can continue from there. So Alpha is really good in that sense. You got Triple Slumber. Now, Slumber is really good. Now, you guys might be thinking, but Spanko, a lot of things can't be destroyed by card effect, or, you know, they float on card effect, or you know, it is what it is. You know what I'm trying to say? So the thing is, Slumber is really good in this deck because of the Dark Ruler No More. Now, the reason I'm saying this is an anti-meta deck and it's actually good this format is because it's a pretty combo-heavy format. Now, outside of the Eldritch Zoo decks, we got Tri-Brigade, we got Dragon Link, even some of the Dino decks are combo Dino, let's be honest. So there's so many combo-ish decks in today's metagame that Dark Ruler No More is really good. Meaning that Slumber is pretty much always going to go off if you have a Dark Ruler No More. Also, if it's in the graveyard, it pretty much just gets you a search. The nice thing about this too is even if you Slumber your opponent, a lot of the times they'll have to use any kind of negate that they have on board on the Slumber, or else they risk losing their monster, which obviously they don't want to do. So that's why Slumber is really good in just multiple ways, right? Even if it gets negated, okay, well, now I got rid of an opponent's negate, you know what I'm trying to say? We got a Waterfront, of course, and the Terraforming. We also got 3 Mystic Minds. So the reason you're kind of playing this heavy field spell, I should say, lineup is because Waterfront is really good in the sense that every time something goes to the graveyard, you're going to get a counter, it gets you a search, it gets you all the Kaiju effects off. Now, you have to keep in mind that this is also going to give your opponent the Kaiju effects, so you have to play around that. Not too difficult to play around it, but just something you should guys just keep in mind. However, the reason you're playing Mystic Mind is obviously when these kind of anti-meta rogue decks, sometimes you don't open the most optimal hands, right? And I hate being the guy who plays Mystic Mind. I actually don't like this card whatsoever. However, it just makes sense in this deck. And you can just get rid of it if you have a Kyoto in your hand. Then you can just get rid of the Mystic Mind once you see that your hand is good enough to break your opponent's board. You get rid of the Mystic Mind and the Waterfront. The nice thing about Mystic Mind, though, is I'm going to be honest with you, it rarely ever stays on the field. And what I mean by that is, if I activate the Mystic Mind, because you always want to go second. I don't know if I mentioned that, but you want to blind second with this deck. So if you activate this Mystic Mind and your opponent has something like a Savage Dragon on board, whatever, right? They're forced to negate the Mystic Mind. So it's just kind of one of those cards where it's like, oh, yes, obviously, if you can get it off, it can stall your opponent out until you got what you need, and then you can start beating down your opponent. However, the more important thing is it just baits out negates. And once you bait out a lot of the negates, you can just go off with this deck. You also got 3 Extravagance, Consistency, you get to draw 2 cards. I like this over Prosperity. That's why I have Prosperity here in the side deck. I just wanted to show you guys, if you wanted to play Prosperity, you could. But I like Extravagance more so for the reason that I would prefer to draw 2 than to add 1. Mostly because you don't really need your extra deck too much in this deck. Also, the thing with Extravagance is, like, getting the extra card, especially in these kind of decks, is really important, right? This, yes, I get to add a card I need. However, pretty much all these cards do the same thing. So let's say I use Extravagance and I end up excavating like 3 cards, right? And all 3 cards are Kaiju, then I just get to add 1 to my hand. However, if I Extravagance, I get to draw both Kaijus, I get to Kaiju my opponent, I get to summon a Kaiju to my side of the field. You know what I'm trying to say? With these kind of decks, you really want to get as many cards as possible, so that's why I thought the Extravagance was just a little bit better. We got 3 Dark Ruler, like I said earlier, just breaks all the combo decks. We got 3 Lightning Storms and a Harpy's Feather Duster. This is just mostly for back row. Now, Lightning Storm can technically be used for monsters as well, so you guys can think about it that way. This is technically like another Slumber or another like Raigeki in a sense, but most importantly, it's for back row decks, because the deck does kind of hard lose to back row. If you're playing against a deck that just sets 5, all your Kaijus are pretty much dead. actually, to be honest, most cards in your deck are pretty much dead. So you really want to be able to play Lightning Storm and out your opponent's back row. That's why Feather Duster is in here as well. Now, for the extra deck, I'm going to keep this short because there's not too much to talk about the extra deck. And if you guys see that you have an Entis, or double Entis, double Nova, double Makaba, this is just for Maximus, I believe, the Dogmatica matchups. Because if they end up using it on you, you can send the Nova and send the Entis, get a pop, and the Nova can summon the Makaba. So there's really just that for you, just get 2 extra monsters on the board. It really just counters that play. Then you got the Omega also for the Maximus play, to be honest. 3 Starving Venom, 2 Mud Dragon, 1 Borreload Furious Dragon, we got 1 Construct and 1 Winda. This is more of a meta call because Super Poly is pretty good against the meta, not good enough to be in the main deck though. So I think this card is really good against a lot of the combo matchups. Stuff like, for example, Dragon Link can actually kind of lose to the Super Poly. Now, obviously, sometimes they play around it, and if they do, they do, but just Games 2, Games 3, Super Poly is really good generally against Dragon Link. You also got the Shaddoll matchups. When they end up summoning Shaddoll monsters, you can Super Poly their Shaddoll monsters away for your own Winda, which is pretty strong if you think about it. So that's why just Super Poly I thought was really good in the side deck, which is why you're playing a bunch of Super Poly targets. But I'm going to be honest with you, side deck does not really matter too much in this. You can also play the Barbaroid, which I wanted to show you here for the Nova, where if you send the Nova, then you can summon the Barbaroid, you don't have to summon Makaba. I'm just showing you guys options that you guys can play. Really, the side deck doesn't matter too much. I would not cut these 6 though, or these 7 I should say. I would definitely play these 7 at least, because just against those Dogmatica matchups is pretty good. But if you choose not to play Super Poly in the side deck and you don't want to do that, then you don't have to play these targets. You can play rank 8 monsters. You won't really be summoning rank 8s too much because you can only have 1 Kaiju on the field at a time. But if you randomly have a Gamma Seal and an Alpha, those are 2 level 8s. You can technically make a rank 8. Really doesn't matter, whatever you guys want to do, but I'm just showing you guys different options. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The thing I want to say is that there is a budget version of this deck coming out. So if you guys are watching this and you're like, how do I play this at a budget level? There is a budget version that I am going to put together for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's really all I got to say. I don't want to make this outro too long. But make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy. Leave a comment down below what you guys want to see next. With that, Spanko, signing out. Peace! G.